We take this opportunity to welcome the panel that has just joined us here, and they are led in this conversation by Elizabeth Nguli, who is the head digital engineering Safaricom PLC, and they will be joined by, of course, virtually, we have Gilbert Sagia, who is the chairman and co-founder EdgeCards. We also have Mandip Birbi, who is business development at Aquad. Did I get that right? Fantastic. And then we have Doug Hunter, who is the head of customer and ecosystem enablement at CISPRO Africa, and Kevin Kariuki, business development lead and product manager at EVO. So I'll hand you over to Elizabeth. Over to you.
Good afternoon and welcome to today's panel discussion. Thank you so much for the introductions. I think we'll just go straight to our subject today. We'll be discussing about how organizations can accelerate time to value for their digital transformation initiatives. I have to say that we all agree, for sure, most of us in this room represented in here and out of the room, there's some form of a digital transformation initiative that you're running for your business. But then, as IT leaders, as IT people, what is the promise that we give to our businesses in regards to the value that they're going to get from the initiatives we take? A lot of investments that have been put into the business to accelerate these transformation initiatives. So today I have a wonderful panel here. We'll be discussing on how we're going to accelerate the time it takes for us to actually get the real value from these transformation initiatives. And with me, I'll just start off with Doug. So Doug, how can organizations really maximize the value from the initiatives that they're taking within their businesses to just drive digital transformation?
So thanks, Elizabeth. So at CISPRO Africa, we focus on manufacturing and distribution companies. So digital transformation there, really, you put in business software, you're trying to get an end result. But what we found in some research we did recently, that with the neighboring conference, in fact, with the Institute of Certified Public Accountants of Kenya, we're releasing some stats next week, where it looks like Kenyan companies, the chief executives or chief financial officers are not really looking for ROI. So that might be one reason why digital transformation in Kenya is actually it's slower than in the equivalent of America and Europe. So what we would say, and a lot of what we do, is we have existing customers. So my role is to help existing customers for CISPRO to do that, go down that journey, which is use the software you have at the moment. And what we say to them is, the first thing you have to do is, it's not a random process. If you want to get value, you need to think return on investment. And the research we found is that people are not measuring that. So people are sticking with what they have and doing sort of renovation rather than innovation. But it's quite easy actually to get value. You have to pick a business project, in our view, pick a business project that's relevant to your business, that's not just the low-hanging fruit that's easy, it's something fairly substantial, because you don't learn to swim by paddling in the shallow water. So you need to immerse yourself in a business project that's enabled by IT. And you have to look for an ROI out of it. There's no point doing it if you don't. The next thing is, typically, you're going to start looking at your processes, of improving or optimizing processes, business processes. So you need the people who are using those processes and who know about them to be part of that. And typically, we find that, if you want to get something done, ask a busy man or a lady. What happens is quite a lot of the people that get involved in these sort of strategic forward moves are not actually the right people. So you have to get the right people because they're the busy people in your company. And then you have to have a vendor, so a software vendor or a technology vendor who gets into the trench with you. There is no point having arm's length discussions, and maybe with with COVID, that's been a problem. You really need to, both as the customer and the software vendor, you have to understand each other's businesses, and you have to really get in the trench together and work together to resolve the problems, because you're both going to benefit out of it. If the customer of a software vendor like ours, a manufacturer or distributor, doesn't get some sort of ROI out of the project, or some serious business improvement from the software enabling their business, why would they do it? So you get those people. Now, the next thing that happens, I'm afraid, generally in Africa, and possibly globally, is once you get the right people, you've got to train people to use the software. That's pretty obvious. And the other thing which has come out a couple of times today is the security. You know, I can't quite remember the stats this morning, but I think it was 18% of errors are actually caused by users maliciously, and 7% of errors are accidents. You know, you really need to have proper security and controls in your software to make sure that users can't manipulate the system. And I'm afraid that typically there's quite a lot of that goes on. So there you are. So it's business project, has to have an ROI, or you have to seek an ROI. You're looking at improving your processes or optimizing some processes. You probably do it in several stages. You must use the right people. And you really have to work with a software vendor. They have to understand your industry, and you have to kind of understand how software goes in and get the security right. Those are the first ones, I would say.
And, I think I picked something key. You don't learn to swim by paddling in shallow waters. And I think what I pick again is the ROI. You have to do it and do right to know that you're getting.
But you have to measure it. You have to measure it.
Oh, okay.
Have a target.
Thank you. So I'm going to take the next question. How can organizations then accelerate the time to this value or return of investment that Doug has just spoken about? And Kevin, you'd like to chime in?
Yes. Hi. So when we talk about digital transformation, it's important first to know that, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but 70%, according to a study by McKinsey, of those digital transformation projects will fail, right? And Forbes thinks it's 84%. So right off the back, everyone who is going on a digital transformation, you have a higher chance of failing, right? But what should you do to have the time to value? How do you mitigate this? So number one is you look at ideally it's business process reengineering, and most of the people, what they do is that they throw in tech in there, right? So you have to build and relook at the individual processes, the individual business units, how they work together, and get their buy-in, okay? So step one, start with the business process units. Before you think of plugging in the tech, re-engineer the processes. At the end of the day, the objective is to improve your value proposition to your customers, right? So in that, then you need to look at all your value products and solutions that you have. How will you improve those processes, right? So number one, start looking at how the different business units work together and the people in those business units, how they're going to work together, and you re-engineer that. Secondly, a lot of people go in and want to change their technologies, right? They want to change their ERP. So from the start, you'll find that ERPs were developed over many years, right, to fit and suit your organization. So you cannot just come and wake up and say, hey, we need to undertake digital transformation, and you rip out the ERP, right? Other people go ahead and say, what do we do next? You can plug in APIs to work with what you have, right? Instead of ripping and replacing, then use what you have, right? And modify that to suit to your business need. And the third one is make sure the organization has sufficient bandwidth, okay? So you're gonna embark on a digital transformation, but still gonna use the same people who are overworked, right? You're gonna load on them more projects. First, you'll find that they do not have the right skills for you to undertake this digital transformation, right? So one, you don't have skills. So you're gonna have to reskill those people to take on those objectives. The other one is you need to have a board agenda, right? Right from the leadership, there needs to be the right kind of buy-in from the board, okay? And then another motivator is you have to celebrate success. Break it down into smaller, manageable chunks and celebrate each success, right? That's how you get buy-in from everyone. And another aspect that I've seen is most businesses do not leverage on their business partners, right? So again, there's the ecosystem that you have in your organization. So it's important that you go out there, reach out to these partners and ask them, how do we go about, how can you help us or give us more value when it comes to the digital transformation? Yeah.
Right. And Kevin, maybe
Yeah.
just thoughts. When you're working with partners, and how do we make sure that we're actually just getting the maximum value from these partnerships as well?
So different partners have different expertise, right? And we said we break down the different tasks into smaller, manageable tasks, right? So you're going to go for a partner who is, for example, good in business continuity, right? If you're undertaking a business continuity project, you make sure that one, they have the industry skills, the industry certifications, and use their skills to leverage that internally.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think I hear quite a bit of starting from where you are, people skilling, reskilling, and all that. Mandeep, do you like to chime into this?
Yes, thank you, Liz. So, on the subject of transformation, one of the key areas, in my view, for transformation is customer experience, right? And within customer experience, I think it's very important. We talk about time to value. Time to value means, how quick can a customer get value, right? So time to value, from a customer experience perspective, where we add value is customer onboarding, right? As you know, our previous moderator, does a lot of reviews of how banks have been, enhancing or increasing their revenues through digital means, and customers these days are doing many more digital transactions, right? So everything's moving. Since COVID, digital transformation has been key. Part of digital transformation is, customer onboarding. Many of you have heard of many neobanks around the world. One of them being Revolut. Revolut has over 15 million customers, and they don't have a single branch anywhere. All their customers on board in a matter of minutes, and they have a bank account in a matter of minutes. Today I'm still waiting, to buy an eSIM from Safaricom at home. I don't really want to go to an agent and get a QR code. Why should I? I can get it. I should get it at home. So I'm waiting for that. So customer experience, customer onboarding, time to value. I'll stop there.
Thank you for that. Digital onboarding, I think the message is quite home, and just automating the touch points that our customers have with us. So maybe I'll just move on to something different. Us as IT people, I know if you work for a company like I do, if you want to make these digital transformation investments, you have to give a lot of promises, write some big papers trying to justify the value. But now the question as IT people, do we really overpromise to the business in terms of these results? Your thoughts?
So I've certainly got thoughts on that. So the technology business is about driving innovation, getting it to work, not just talking about it. So it's promise, then deliver. I would say that if you're on the edge of technology because you want to implement something to get a bit of competitive advantage, you're always going to find, well, some of it that was promised isn't ready yet. And that's pretty typical of software, hardware, any technology. But it's the nature of the industry. If you're developing new technologies, there's huge investment in investing in people and time and even technologies to make them work. Sometimes I think it's seen as over-promising, but it's not really over-promising. It's people overestimating the speed with which they can get things done. And it's not always the technology that doesn't do it. So yes, there's an element of over-promising, but you can weigh the risk up by getting in first mover advantage is always good, even if the experience isn't always perfect. So I think that it's the nature of being on the edge of innovation and technology is you're always going to, as the person that bought it, think somebody overpromised, but as the person that delivered it saying, well, it's just not quite ready yet.
Thank you, Doug. So it's not overpromising, it's the time it takes to get the value. Mandeep, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'll chime in there. I think having run many projects, I'm not young, right? I've done lots of these, and I've experienced delays in running projects. I think the importance is running teams, and as Kevin said earlier, right? It needs to be strategic. Transformation needs to come board down and be fully supported. I really like the fact that Safaricom is now running agile teams and everything is focused that way. Right? So it's the way to ensure that there are no delays. And if it's run top down, that is the way to make it happen.
Well, from my point of view, I feel like most of the time there's a slight disconnect between IT and business, right? IT will often want the new shiny toys, right? They want the best servers, the fastest. But when you come and do a proper analysis, they probably needed just a slight upgrade, right? And then and you'll see this usually coming out when it comes to convincing business to fund those digital transformation projects. Maybe because they've invested previously and they didn't get the ROI as fast as they would have wanted, right? So yes, there is need to have IT and business see eye to eye, right? As opposed to business thinking of a digital transformation or a customer experience idea, and then all you just want to do is bring in the tech, right? IT guys, what do we do? There should be some sort of synergy between business and IT.
All right. So maybe that brings me then to the next question now. As IT people, how do we continue telling this digital transformation story to business and as well continuously show them value so that we continue then getting the support that we need, the investment approvals that we need? Mandeep?
Sorry. I think value on transformation comes through innovation, and clearly to prove this to management, you've got to have the right KPIs in place and be able to prove that customers are onboarding, the technology is working, etc. So that's those. I'll stop there. But those in my view are key in ensuring that one is able to get necessary funding, and that the development of those projects are creating the value that customers love.
If I may, I'd say that if you want to get the story going, then you need to show it works on. So you need customers who will try it with you. Like I said at the start, if you're on the sort of edge of innovation, you're both taking a risk. So you really need to work closely together, and you want it to work for both the people selling the stuff and the guys using it. So if you're not the first person to ever do it, where the risk is higher, look for case studies of other people like in your industry or in a similar situation so that you can say, well, these people did it, and that worked. So we're better than them, we can do it. And then, as you were saying, you've just got to have the right process to do it. And cover the risks. If you know you're taking risks, then perhaps you don't do it in the highest, most profitable part of the business first. You try it somewhere. So you can do smaller projects that then you do case studies on, and then it gives more and more confidence to other people to do it. So that's the way I'm going. You have to share stories. Although we're competitive, you still have to, as a nation, or a region even, you have to share competitive successes with each other in case studies.
Thank you, Doug. We could take a question from the audience, in case there's any question from the audience.
Yeah.
Can you provide a mic to the ladies?
Hi everyone, and thank you so much for that. So my name is Atani Angema. I think I'm a transplant into the tech space, so I exist more at the intersection of development, finance, and technology. So my background is finance. I am apologizing in advance for the return on investment questions that I'm going to be asking. Okay, so maybe mine is, I have one comment and then I have a question. So my comment is, so I've served on boards in the financial services space and a couple of other places in Kenya and South Africa, and one of the biggest challenges that we experience at the board level, because we are non-executive and we don't interact with the business, is the fact that we get significant budget approvals, like requests from the teams. And just like has been pointed out on the panel, in a lot of cases, if I, as a board member, cannot see what we are calling the time to value, and I cannot see exactly how this investment translates into a return, whether we are talking about the triple bottom line or whether we are talking about profitability, then as a board member, because I'm not engaging with the business on a day-to-day, it's very difficult for those approvals to come through. So one of the organizations whose boards I serve on, they started doing this thing called the lowest cost of experimentation, which is they take a budget that would ideally be, $1 million, and then they cut that down into what's the smallest amount of money that it will take for us to be able to experiment and to actually show that this can work for our business and if implemented properly. So that's just a comment for those people who go to the board and you're asking for approval. If you're facing challenges with getting approvals for significant budgets, LCE is a really good way to go. But my other question is something that's been touched on a little bit, but I was trying to figure out. So I remember when I was in finance, we used to fight with marketing because marketing would ask for money and we would say, can you show us the return on investment? And then they'd say, no, but you'll see the billboards, but we can't tell you how many sales have directly come from this kind of visibility we are trying to create. And I can kind of see that creeping into technology to some extent. So my question is probably a question that might not have an answer, but I do want to know, when we are running digital transformation projects or when we're running technology projects, is it always possible to be able to articulate the return on investment from a bottom line perspective, basically, on an income statement? Is it always possible to be able to tie those two things? And then the other challenge is that in a lot of cases, when we tend to have the owners of these projects being with an organization for a specific period of time, and they tend to be the champion for the project. If sometimes in some cases when they leave the organization, then you have this gap where there's not really someone who's championing this particular, and you've invested a significant amount of money, and you do have to talk, you do have to report to your shareholders and you do have to report to your investors. So how do you deal with all those conflicting realities where you have someone who champions the project, maybe they've left, you've invested a significant amount of money, you're not able to articulate the return from a P&L perspective or an income statement perspective. Like, how do you navigate all those and at the same time trying to make sure that the organization is able to implement projects that really, give a competitive advantage and is able to, contribute to the triple bottom line or contribute to the profits of our organization? I know that's a bit of a mouthful, but I am really curious because we've been having these conversations on ROI for such a long time, and I feel like I still don't have 100% clarity on how to navigate all those conflicting demands of an organization, especially at board level.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Who wants to take that question?
I could go first. Okay.
All right. Kevin?
And it's a challenge. It's a similar challenge that we face as service providers and value-added resellers for most organizations. And for me, and we also help a lot of customers set up proposals that ideally you should be selling to the board. And I often try and match some business priorities, right? Like, as we speak, any business is looking to have, one of the business priorities is customer experience. So if whatever solution or digital transformation objective you have is tied towards improving your customer experience, then more often than not, you will have those projects sailing through. So that's one example of a priority that often wouldn't resonate at a dollar value, right? So customer experience. The other thing is if you're undertaking business transformation, digital transformation projects around security, right? So any solution, anything you're building nowadays, you have to tie it with security. You have to make sure that security is part and parcel of those solutions. So we find that security, customer experience, they are often really at the top when it comes to selling those ideas at a board level. And they often sail through because they are priorities that any business that is looking to be running in the future will be undertaking. I don't know.
Yeah, so I would say it's easier for us to say ROI and triple bottom line, whatever. Yeah, it's often very difficult because well, you have to look for, I think you said it yourself, you have to look for the smaller ones that you can measure first to prove the case so that you don't have to do such a detailed proof of the bigger case. And again, because we deal with manufacturing and companies that deal with inventory, typically one of the biggest costs is the cost of inventory. So if you can improve the processes so that you give more service to your customers with less inventory, your working capital comes down, there are some direct bottom line results you can look at. But to get it really clinically clear, I agree with you, marketing and IT both say, don't worry, we're going to get a huge return. But how huge is huge? So you have to measure it. I would say that in banks, for example, or financial services, if you're looking at insurance or banking, if you can service more customers for less money, there must be a trade-off there as well, because again, if you're growing your revenue and reducing your costs, you should get a better return. So there are ways of doing it. It's not easy, and many companies don't do it, which we can see from the stats. They sort of think they're making it, but they don't know. So I would say, you have to look for some areas where you can really get 3 or 4 measures that are reasonably concrete, that you can say, these are representative of our business. They don't cover the whole business, but look what we've done after you've done your small or large project. The downside of all of it is, I think both in marketing and in IT, we're not very good at covering the whole cost base. We don't actually apportion all the costs properly. People's time is expensive. There are opportunity costs. I think it is slightly cloudy, and I don't mean cloud servers and things. I mean, it is difficult, but you have to find some measures at least that translate into an effect on ROI. That's what I would say.
Thank you, Kevin and Doug. We have 3 minutes remaining, Mandip, so we'll just go to the concluding question. In view of these conversations for digital transformation, I'll let each of you respond to this. What is your counterintuitive prediction about the next 5 years on how our industry will look like?
Good question. I've been thinking about that for the last few days. Most companies these days are going down the digital transformation pathway, but living in Africa, I think as technology continues to improve, I believe we are leaving behind the underserved, and I continuously see an issue there. To give you an example, I talked about eSIM earlier. I speak to many customers who've got iPhones and ask them, do you have an eSIM? And they don't know. So, Apple have developed eSIMs on their phones. Many customers are buying those. They don't know about that technology. Right? So, equally, I've sold solutions, within Africa, and these solutions around digital onboarding, they are difficult to implement for customers who don't have any documents. So we are, as technology improves, we need to understand that, and in my view, that's an issue, or one of the issues. The other one that I can think of is, I think that we're going to end up running into a developer shortage. I've read some articles recently. We had Jack earlier. He's got 450 developers. Developers are getting sucked up by, and there'll be a shortage, in my view. I'll stop there.
Okay. Yeah. One maybe of the things that we may be seeing in the next 5 years could be around augmented reality in an attempt to give your customers an experience, a look and feel of the products and solutions. So maybe we could see a lot of augmented reality. This is whereby you're able to look and feel solutions, experience them in 3D, maybe 3D glasses and things like that. Could see that coming up in the future.
I'm afraid very quickly, mine is not so counterintuitive. I think what we'll see in the next 5 years in Africa in particular is people actually starting to do more with technology, taking more chances. I think we've got a chance to do it. We're behind. So maybe we can make use of some of the newer technologies before the companies that left before us are still trying to get to grips with what they started. Maybe we'll jump ahead of them, and maybe places like Safaricom and the telcos will become the IT providers of the future.
Thank you, Doug. Thanks, Mandeep and Kevin. And thanks to the audience for making time to listen to us. Because of time, we have to end it here. Thank you so much.